Hey guys, this video is all about conceal hinges, European hinges. There's a lot of information about these hinges. There are face frame hinges and then box construction. Of course, you have full overlay, partial overlay, inset, right? And a lot of different brands, Bloom, Grass, Talici. I prefer Bloom. Of course, there's soft close and 120 degree opening, 170 degree opening. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to show you the proper procedure for adjusting. Sometimes they have a two-way adjustment, sometimes three adjustment, which is even better. But I'll show you the proper way to do that, the order to do it, so it makes it easy and you don't get frustrated and you'll save time. All right, let's roll.
Well, these videos ended up getting a little bit too long. I'll show you my adjustment procedure in part 2.
All right, European hinges, there is a huge selection. I primarily use, I almost exclusively use Bloom. And the reason why is I'm used to them. The boring pattern for Bloom, I believe, is the same as Talici. It might be different for Grass. The location of these hinges, or these screws, in relation to this 32 millimeter, what they call the cup, is a little bit different, I believe. Let me grab something. So this is the cup, and the location, the location of these screw holes in relation to the main cup may be different. So I'm used to Bloom anyway. Lots of different configurations. This is a really standard hinge currently, and it is a Bloom 110 degree opening. So if this was your cabinet panel, and the door is here in the front where my thumb is, this hinge will open 110 degrees, okay? Here's another one that doesn't have the soft close. This one has the soft close. You can see that. And incidentally, most soft close hinges, if they're a quality brand, they will have this little switch, and you can toggle that over, and then you will hear it click. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 clicks, and then when you open it, it's gone through its cycle, and now the soft close is off. So if you have a small door and it just takes forever to close, you can turn one of these, flip one of these switches on or off to activate or deactivate that soft close. This is called an inset hinge, and you can see how it has this big offset here, and this will make your door inset. So if this was the panel, let's say this is the panel, and this is the door, that's an overlay situation. Of course, this would be an inset situation. And it looks similar to another hinge, which I don't have one, that's called a crank arm. And a crank arm looks very similar to this, but it has less of this offset. And again, this would be the panel. This would be two doors. They would be sharing one panel. And in that situation, you would use what's called a crank arm. And it looks similar to this, although this is an inset application. So many different applications, it is mind-boggling, really. And I just have a pittance of what's available. This is designed for a corner cabinet that would have a 45 degree door. Again, if this was the panel, you can see the door would be set at a 45 degree angle. And they make all different angles, and then they make wedges where you can go between those angles that are available. Huge selection of applications just for just about anything you need. This is an older style hinge. This is a 170 degree hinge. Actually, back in the 80s or 90s, it was 176 degree hinge. And of course, that just designates that this door will open from closed 170 degrees. That's crazy, right? So why would you need that? Well, a lot of times when you have a hinge that only opens 110 degrees, if you have rowdy kids, they could hyperextend that door by hitting it. A lot of leverage there, and they can break the hinge or splinter out here. With a 170-degree hinge, it's going to open up a little bit more. There are applications where you need a door to open up further. Maybe it's a hard to reach area and you need that door to open nearly all the way back upon itself. When I talk about overlay, that is the distance that the door overlays this end panel. Your end panel could be 15 millimeter, 5/8, or it could be 19 millimeter, 3/4. Those are all going to factor in the different amount of overlay. And typically, your hinge is a standard application, and the plate for the hinge designates or determines the overlay, but not always. Sometimes you can integrate both of those characteristics to create an overlay. So this is what's called a 0 millimeter plate, which means, and these are European, so keep that in mind. So a zero protrusion plate or 0 millimeter plate, that means that on a 5/8 panel, a 15 millimeter panel, a 0 millimeter plate will give you a door that's flush on the outside. So it gets confusing. You know, they make these in a 0 millimeter, 3 millimeter, 6 millimeter, 9 millimeter, 18 millimeter. I believe that is here, let's just see. Let me grab a hinge. Put that on. So on a 5/8 panel, that would give you 9 millimeter. And they also make an 18 millimeter, which is even thicker this way. They're very unsightly looking hinge plates. You can see this would be what's called a screw on. So you would directly screw that on with, well, screws, right? Small screws. This one here. So these dowels would go into the system holes, the 5 millimeter system holes that are 32 millimeters apart. It's called the 32 millimeter system. So all those holes are pre-drilled when the cabinets are all the parts are being cut. And then you just slip these in the hole, tighten up the screws, boom. Very, very easy way if you're doing a bunch of doors. But these can be screwed into place. This is an older style. This is stamped steel. These are cast. This is probably more common. These are less expensive, which is good. And you can see that they've also changed over the years. This has a height adjustment with this screw right here. You have to loosen that screw and then physically move the hinge or the door up and down. This one has a cam adjustment, so you just turn that and the hinge will move up or down on the hinge plate. Different offset or overlay. Here's another one with system screws, another style. I didn't care for these at all. In my opinion, they're a one-time use. In other words, if you run these coarse screws into the 5 millimeter system holes in melamine, which is particle board, you really can't take those out and do anything else. Those holes are trashed. I've never really cared for those. Here's another hinge, and with this hinge you can take a box construction type hinge. Incidentally, these are all referred to as box construction, and I'll show you face frame hinges here in a bit. Box construction hinge, you can take a box construction hinge and put it on this kind of a plate. Sometimes these were called a butterfly plate, but you can see how unique looking they are. And with that, you could put this on a face frame. So you had a face frame, this would go on its edge like that, right? And now you have a box construction hinge with a face frame application. Why would you want that? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about that when we get into face frame hinges. This is another brand Lewis and Company, Worth, sells, and this is called a Pro Series. These are fantastic. They are really inexpensive, and they have all the features that the Bloom carries. Pretty quality hinge for the price. Now we're going to talk about this hinge in particular with this plate, which is probably the most common. So with this type of hinge, this Bloom and the clip-on, you can see this little rod here, this metal dowel. It corresponds with this little saddle on the plate that engages in that saddle, and then, oops, got it backwards, and then snaps into place, right? Then to release, you can just pull that off. So in application, all these plates could be on the cabinets. The doors could be separate and stacked, taken to the job site. These could be put in at the job site and then snapped in place. Incidentally, another common application for the hinge going into the door, which I don't have any right now, is a door that gets the 8mm holes drilled in the door. This would go in, this would have dowels on it. It goes in, and then it has a cover that snaps it in place. And those are called a clip top. Really awesome hinge if you're doing a bunch of doors and you don't want to transport your cabinets with the doors on them for whatever reason. Here's yet another hinge plate, and you can see that this is actually, they call it black, but it's kind of like a bronze. But these are just a low profile. I really like these. Let's put this guy in place. They operate the same way, just like that. Pretty slick, right? I like this hinge. They don't have a lot of options in this color, but if you don't want this chrome looking thing inside a cabinet, this is a good option. This one's, as I mentioned earlier, an inset and also a soft close. All right, let's talk about adjusting this type of a hinge. Go ahead and clip this guy in place.
And I'll be showing you the proper order to adjust this type of hinge in part 2.
With this Bloom hinge, you have, oh, incidentally, this is a Phillips screwdriver. These are posi drive. It's kind of like a European Phillips, I guess. Most of your European hardware, or all your European hardware, is going to require a posi drive screwdriver. Don't confuse that with a Phillips. They are not the same. A Phillips will fit, but they don't quite engage properly. And you can distinguish a posi drive because it has these little tick marks in between the cross section of that Phillips looking head. It's not a Phillips, it's posi drive. P-O-Z-I, posi drive. And they engage much better. It's really easy to cam those out with a Phillips, so do yourself a favor if you're doing very many of these, get a posi drive screwdriver. Okay, this is your height adjustment, and on the newer style plates, this is just a cam. You just turn that and it'll move the hinge up or down on the hinge plate. Fantastic and easy to use. These older style ones were awkward. You'd loosen that. You can see how the plate is two-piece, right? They're okay, but this was an excellent upgrade, probably in the 90s. So yeah, those are old. Anyway, I don't even know if you can get those anymore, but it doesn't matter.
Actually, an advantage to that old plate was that third screw hole.
These work well. So that's your height adjustment. That would be your first adjustment. Your second adjustment that you would do is this screw here, which is a lateral adjustment. And by turning that, you can see that that hinge simply pivots or rocks, kind of like a ramp, this direction with that screw. And I'm not sure the amount that it moves, but it's quite a bit. Should be plenty if your doors are sized correctly. And if your cabinets are installed, that's actually an interesting point. If I have a pair of doors here, let's pretend that these are doors, cabinet doors on a base, upper, doesn't matter. If you have a large door, the larger your door or the larger the cabinet, the more accurate you need to be, because you know, if that door warps a little bit, it's going to take up all the adjustment out of your hinge, even before you can set your gap between the doors. So it's really important to be accurate. Smaller doors, you're going to have a better chance. But let's say you have a wall that is plumb on the right side of the cabinet and not plumb on the left side, and it gets installed and that box gets twisted. It's going to rack the cabinet and it's going to make the door hard to adjust. So the installer really needs to pay attention to install cabinets. Plumb, levels, true, square, all that. They need to be shimmed correctly from the wall, because walls, let's face it, walls, floors, ceilings are not flat or straight for the most part, right? So that was the second adjustment. This one here, that's a lateral adjustment, and I'll show you more about that. And then this last adjustment would be this screw here, and that'll move the hinge or the door in and out. And this has also been changed over the years from, I don't even think, oh, that used to be on the hinge. Of course, it's on the hinge. Where'd it go? Right here. Yeah. This is how you used to have to adjust in and out with this older style plate. Awkward. Very awkward. Anyway, huge improvement with these new plates. So yeah, I guess they did. They moved the in and out from the plate to the hinge. That's excellent.
Here are some European hinges, but these are designed for face frame application.
This is an 1.25" overlay soft close. So if you have a 1.5" frame, this would go on the edge of the, this is a little bit fatter than 3/4 probably, but this would go on the edge of the face frame with the door closed. You can see that would give you about an 1.25" overlay. Okay, these are a soft close 1/2 inch overlay. So similar situation. And only about a 1/2 inch overlay, but same design really. I don't know why I have two in this same bag, two different. So those, oh, I see. So this is a soft close. You can see that mechanism there. Oh, that's a soft close too. Well, heck. Hold on. Oh, I know. Yeah. Told you there was a lot of options. So this one has a 2-way adjustment. This one has a 3-way adjustment. Much better hinge. So look for 3-way adjustment hinges when you're purchasing them. Here's another one, not a soft close. Very inexpensive hinge, 1/2 inch overlay. 3-way adjustment, kind of. You can see the in and out. This is lateral, and your height adjustment would be the screw that goes in here, which would be a panhead screw, and you can see that's elongated, so you can adjust the hinge up and down. This is an older style that was really common in the 90s, 2000. They had a lot of problems with these because they would, the spring inside this would break. So this was called the Series 33 Bloom face frame. That dude goes on there like that. And these are a standard half inch overlay, I believe. Boom. About a 1/2 inch overlay. You know, when face frame hinges came out, this was really all that was available. They weren't all that great. This was your lateral adjustment. There was no in and out. And then your height adjustment was with a bugle head screw. Loosen the bugle head screw and you could do vertical height adjustment up and down. All right, let's go ahead and install a couple of these hinges. These are just regular close. They're not a soft close. Matter of fact, they are the older style with the in and out being on the hinge here, elongated. They don't have the awesome height adjustment. That's a cam. You simply turn that and it moves up and down, or in and out, I mean. But just to show you a couple of things, we'll use these. All right, so I see a lot of people screwing these on and they'll take a square, which is okay. It works to line up their hinge, right? However, boom, boom. Yeah, that works. But another way to do it is simply to use a straight edge or scrap of wood that's straight and bring it up, and you can see that it just swivels those into position. Beautiful, perfect, easy, all that. Now you could use one of these centering bits. I'll show you. And that works pretty good. On a 3/4 door, you can use a 3/4 screw because this is 3/4 overall, and you're not using the entire length of the screw. You know, this is a few millimeters or an 1/8 inch thick hinge. So let's anchor that guy. Incidentally, these screws, see the color of them? These are designed for this type of a hinge. And you can get regular 5/8 screws that are, you know, like a nickel plated. But see how fat they are? The head is bigger. They're not, the head's not recessed or shaped quite right. The points aren't the same. They are not the same. This is a much more refined screw and way better. And if I can find the link, I have tons of these screws now. I don't buy them anymore because I don't do kitchen cabinets or commercial casework. I have plenty of screws to last me a lifetime. So I don't know, so I haven't ordered those in a long time, is what I'm saying. All right, let's attach this other one. And I was gonna show you, these screws are so awesome that you literally do not have to use a drill. This would apply for melamine or, in this case, plywood. How fantastic is that? Okay.
Okay. I don't like videos to get too long, so come back for part 2, yeah? Thanks a ton.